everyone, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host.
Welcome.
Christina Weber.
Sorry.
Look at this. My guest's already jumping in. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder of We Deepen, wedeepen.com. As you begin listening today, open your browser, go to wedeepen.com, see all of the dope, community-oriented, transformational experiences. We have lots of stuff happening in Los Angeles and also bringing these experiences into other cities. So make sure you check the calendar. Fun, because I have two guides, creators of this space with me today that we're going to
pun intended
dive into conversation shortly. And before we jump in, because I think it's important to always share, how are you? Where are you? And in this moment, I'm feeling pretty tender. I have an open wound. In the episodes that actually was released, I saw it pop up on my iPad or my podcast app as we were starting recording. A new episode has just released with Yadi Iksa, episode number 14, part 1 and part 2. And the part 2 of that episode was recorded 2 days ago, where Yadi took me through an emotional freedom technique, an EFT session, where I tapped. She led me through tapping through a personal issue that I'm experiencing right now. And I have released that. I've shared that session. It's a limited edition. And I say that limited edition in the sense that I'm going to leave that recording up for about a week or two. And then I'll take it down and potentially re-add it in the future when it's not so tender and the wound isn't so open right now. But I just wanted to share that with you all because, the guest and myself we're light beings. We are, the healers and the coaches and the people doing the work, and yet life is challenging, and we are all navigating, what do they call it? The terrain environment. What is your environment like? And the outside environment is messy and sticky. And there's a lot of wounds in humanity right now that we all are feeling. But the great thing about this episode today is I have two people. This is the first time on Deepen with Christina that I have had two guests, and
exclusive.
My two guests are lit right now. Imari Tuakli.
Oh my God. So just for everybody listening, context, this is the second time I've been on Christina's podcast, and it is also the 75th time she's misspoken my last name, but regardless.
Well, let's also add in, I called Imari Anderson for the first 2-3 years that I knew him, and he has recently moved or shifted into your true last name.
Return of the King.
Yes, return to it. Tuakli.
Yeah, everyone. Tuakli. Oh, there you go. Hey. A round of applause. Can the DJ press the little applause button for us? Okay, sorry.
And then we have Miles Alix.
Oh, that was nice.
Hey, yes. I am here. Just nailed that one.
I know.
I just don't think she likes
out
it,
the gate.
Well, you have a name that has licks in it. I mean, how fun is that? Alix.
All right.
All right. I agree. I thought this is why I got there.
Bringing us back to the
smooth.
PG version of this podcast.
And the two of these two gentlemen are, I would say, best friends. You have a best friend kinship, and they are creating together. And that's one of my favorite at this point in my life. I have no desire for really new friends. I'm mostly interested in people who I work with. I'll be friends with you if we can create something together. Like let's build. Let's have a productive friendship, or a friendship that's expansive and going to have meaning and purpose. I don't want to just go hang out with you at a bar. I want to do shit with you.
Come on, Christina.
So you two have created space, and from my, this is the second space coming up that we are sharing through We Deepen as a partner of space. And it's my understanding that the space was created. Both of you love to dance. You have been
Facts.
regulars at ecstatic dance experiences. And there was something that I wouldn't say felt was necessarily missing, but that you wanted to ignite a spark to it, that you wanted to shake things up and add your twist and style to it. And that is why space was created.
Well done. Well done. A great little summary of our Wikipedia article, I would say. Yes. The best friends who went to ecstatic dance and then ventured on their own adventure. Yes.
And to give listeners a little bit of a background on each of you personally, Imari is a master coach, and he guides group coaching programs. He's a speaker as well as a one-on-one coach and a content creator.
Those things are true. Very true.
Miles, DJ, tell me more, because Miles, you're fairly new to me, and so I want to give a little bit of a introducing you into the mix in the correct way.
Yeah, No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm really kind of like a musical maestro, jack of all trades of sorts. I work in music supervision, so I place music in movies and television, and I work in the entertainment industry in that regard. And then I also am a producer of my own stuff, and a DJ, and an occasional rap star. Just occasional. No. But yeah, so I do a little bit of everything as far as music goes, and it's really that's like my tool with which I work. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like, music is my tool to connect and build houses with. So that's that about summarizes it.
Do you freestyle?
I like that it wasn't even like rap. I'm an occasional rapper. It's like I'm an occasional rap star.
Oh yeah, you can't just casually say
from
rapper.
Time to time I do world tours.
What did Christina? I missed the question though. What did you say?
Do you freestyle?
No. I do for fun, and I think it's part of the practice to enjoy just spitting bars and not really taking yourself seriously. Like, even Imari and I used to live together, and we would have freestyle sessions at the house even.
No, roast them.
We would just be going
turkey on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, okay. But it was a lot of fun, and it's all in jokes, and it's all in good humor. And I think that's a key to just learning how, one, not to judge yourself, and two, how to just have fun. So the short answer is, am I going to sit here and say I'm about to spit the nastiest bars you've ever heard just straight off the dome? No, that would be a lie. What would be the truth is, I'm here to crack jokes and have a good time if I was to freestyle. But don't you try and get that out of me. I'm going to say that right now.
Like, prep
I
for
can
it?
see you. I can just feel you scheming.
She's like, yeah, so spit a 16 for us then. Why don't you chump? It's like, no, relax.
Well, in this podcast, what I do want to share with everyone listening, I want them to leave this recording knowing more about space. If they were to enter in space, what would they get? What would it be like? Who would they meet? And what would they feel? So that's the goal of this conversation together. I want to share that with people. I want them to feel comfortable and excited to walk into the space, or to know, hey, this is not for me. Because we don't need to be something for everybody. So the space is an experience. It's happening monthly. in the Los Angeles area, beginning in its first city. If you're listening and you're in tune with it and you wanted to come to your city and you have some connections there, feel free to reach out and we're ready to go.
Let's go. So ready. Let's do it.
So the space has now happened, pre-virus. It was popping in Los Angeles. It took a pause, the beat pause for a bit of time, and it just re-kicked back up.
Selling out every time.
It has...
Before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, it was selling out every single time. Just wanted to flex a little bit on that.
And selling out. How many people? So I know right now at this new venue that you have, 200 people can fit into the space.
Correct.
And it's currently happening in a warehouse in downtown LA. We, after each experience, we send out some surveys and we gather some feedback, and people hype about it or rave about it in the We Deepen WhatsApp chat. And what I heard, because I wasn't there, unfortunately, I cannot wait to be back so I get to attend and join a space too. But what I heard is that there was this deep feeling of intimacy and connection, and that people felt...
Is that what you heard?
That is totally what I heard. And that it was, to go to a space that, pun intended, I guess, unintentional, but to go to space and to share your weekend night, a Friday or Saturday evening, and to wake up the next morning and feel like, just to feel alive. We're so used to, in a society, of going out on a Friday or Saturday night and, drinking alcohol, taking some shots. If you're going to a nightclub in, say, New York City or LA, your feet are hurting if you're a woman because you're in some high heels. And with this experience, it felt like being in a nightclub. This is what I heard. It felt like being in a nightclub, but you didn't wake up feeling like shit, and you actually connected and had deep conversations with
people.
That is all of what we're about. That is exactly on the money.
Yes.
So,
just what the doctor ordered.
That makes my heart so happy to hear. I love that. But that's right. I mean, it's really if you picture like a Venn diagram, right? And on the one side, you have ecstatic dance. And on the other side, you have like your typical nightclub, and you know what that's like, right, Imari? It's drinking, it's partying, a lot of debauchery going on, and
coke in the bathroom.
It's especially that. But it's not necessarily considered like a safe space, so to speak, for a lot of people. Space is really the middle circle of those two that kind of blends the best of both worlds. So you get this atmosphere that feels like a nightclub, but it is, safe. It is a great container for people to express and experience intimacy and love and celebration and joy, without, the fear of judgment or peer pressure or, unwanted sexual advances by men or women or what have you. It's a space for everybody to really have a crazy party while also, oh my God. One of my friends said it best. He said he got 3 years of therapy in 3 hours while partying. That's like, that doesn't, that just fills me up. So that's about exactly what we're doing here. So
you mentioned
beautiful.
You mentioned safe, and that it's a safe space. I always, when producers, and I've said it before, this is a safe space. There's a piece of me that's wants to push back on that word a little bit, because you never know what is safe for somebody else. You say peer pressure.
Correct.
And peer pressure might be coming from somebody that is, somebody who doesn't want to dance. And you're like, but come on and dance. So as you being the guides of holding this container, how do you, like, when you say it's a safe space, like, what makes it in your mind, what makes it a safe space?
Oh my God, what a good question.
It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. So I think that there's like an undercurrent of what we're talking about right here, which is sexuality, right? I'm assuming that's kind of like the baseline of what we're talking about, right? Like there's a whole bunch of different ways you can create a safe space, but what we're talking about right now is specifically the relationship between going out at night and feeling safe in your sexuality. Yeah? And I remember one thing everybody should know is that every space has a theme, right? Every space has like an aesthetic, right? This last one was Zion. We've done royalty. And we did one called Desire, where we really wanted to explore what does it look like to be sensual without being sexualized? What would it look like for, just to use a woman, for example, like a woman to be fully in her sexual expression, maybe like grinding on the floor, and she doesn't feel like some dude is gonna be like, hey, Ma, like, how you doing? Like, can I buy you a drink? And she can be that without feeling in danger. And I think part of it is that there is a context set at the beginning of space, right? It can be as simple as like, if you go into a club, it feels like you're being tossed into the wild. Right? There's no rules. There's no order. There's no structure. It's just like, go. Whatever happens, happens. Versus at space, there is a very intentional conversation that we have at the beginning, which is like, this is what consent looks like. You're allowed to explore your sexuality here. If you need to go in the corner and just make out, like, that's completely fine. Like, do what needs to be done. And here's how you can turn down a sexual advance in a way that feels safe for you and that doesn't feel like an attack on the person. And this is how to receive a quote unquote rejection in a safe way. So the container is set at the beginning through different workshops and through a conversation so that you take that connotation through the rest of the experience. And I know, like, these are a bunch of words and blah, blah, blah. Like, honestly, many of the questions that you ask us, Christina, I feel like are just going to be answered with, you have to experience it. You really just going to have to see what it's like. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to add on to that too, you know, it's also having a great team that is able to hold that space. And if people feel uncomfortable, like, you can talk to somebody, and we point out, like, who are the no pun intended, this is going to happen a lot, space holders, you know? So that's that we have multiple layers of creating that safe environment, because people oftentimes, it might not even be sexual, people might just not want to be dancing with somebody, or people might just want to be sitting alone in a corner, and that brings them joy, and that's totally okay and absolutely welcome. And the other big part, which is in contrast to, you know, the club, is the removing of substances. You know, not having alcohol be a factor, not having drugs be a factor. It just allows for clear vision and clear communication to help, you know, establish and uphold boundaries of security for people. So that's a big, you know, again, when we're talking about the Venn diagram, that's another aspect that puts us more into the middle space, where it's not, you know, you don't have a bunch of drunk people approaching you or whatever, even though it is like a darker lit environment. You do have strobe lights, you do have, you know, big different colored lights like flashing all over the place, and projections on the wall, so it does feel like a nightclub, but it is not energy wise comparable to a drunk environment. Yeah. So I think that's another big component of kind of upholding that standard.
I like how, you know, Imari, you had said that going into a club is like going into the wild. And
yeah.
I see that because, you know, as I step into a nightclub space, there's nobody that is, the doorman may greet me, but nobody is...
if he even acknowledges you.
Nobody's really...
Pats you down, get in there.
There's no guidance in that type of experience. And so that is uniquely different.
Yeah.
Now, I may go to a nightclub and not like to dance. I may go just to hang out, just to drink. Within space, is space a dance? Like, you only go to space if you like to dance. If you don't like to...
It is a dance of life.
If you don't like to dance, this is not your space, because that's essentially what it is a dance.
Yeah. This is interesting because I hear what you're saying, right? And like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you're like, you may find out that space is not for you, and if so, talk to your doctor and whatever, right? So yes, space is a heavily dance informed event, 100%. There will never be a space in which people do not dance, right? At the same time, I feel like we get into very kind of dangerous territory if we start saying like, oh yeah, if you don't like to dance, don't come to space. Because for me, it's not about the dance. I feel like we redefine what dancing is. It's moving your body in a way that you can express yourself, right? Like literally last time, no bullshit, at space, there was a moment where I just needed to lay down on the dance floor in the middle of the dance floor. And people were jumping all kind of shit around me. But like what my body wanted, what my mind and my spirit and my energy wanted was to lay down right here. And that is part of the dance.
And that was, people supported even that action, right? Like people weren't looking at him weird or anything like that. I know like a couple people that sat down next to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is now part of the dance. Like this is our collective dance, so to speak. I think he did that to Human Nature by Michael Jackson, which is a very appropriate song.
So the reason I bring that up is because like I want us to be very careful of the image that we put in people's minds, because there may be somebody who's like, I've never been a dancer, I've never been to a dance class, so I can't go. It's like, be careful, because that's not exactly what's happening here. What's happening here is I'm giving you permission to move your body in a way that feels like a language and a conversation is happening with yourself, right? Yeah. So that's not dance to me. I facilitate these dance whatever workshops. I've never taken a dance class in my life. I'm not actually interested in taking a dance class in my life because I'm interested in like...
I have. This looks nothing like that. Let me tell you.
It's not a dance class. It's not a dance workshop, but it is a space in which you are encouraged to move your body.
Yeah, it's like redefining what it means to be a dancer. Rather than saying like, I am not a dancer, it's like everybody is a dancer.
Exactly.
And that's the concept that we really would like people to understand and leave with.
One of the most sorry, I'll let you finish in a second. Like one of the most like vivid illustrations that I remember seeing when I first started going to ecstatic dance is there was a guy in the middle of the dance floor, not on the fucking outskirts, in the middle of the dance floor who was in a wheelchair. And he could not...
I remember that, dude.
Yeah.
He was the shit.
He couldn't dance. He would just sit there and like move his neck. And every time I came to ecstatic, I would always come to him and like always like dap him up and like dance around him, because I was like, yo, hell yes, right? Because guess what, quote unquote, yeah, he's dancing, right? But it's because of what Miles was saying. It's like we're redefining what it means to be a dancer. You are somebody who enjoys being in an expression-filled, inhibition-free environment. That's what that is. Cool.
The reason that I'm asking about that is because I have friends and I know of people who say they don't like to dance. And I do also see that inside of them that there is some type of fear around dancing. Right. And they're also in these same people that I'm thinking of, these dear best friends, there's also fear of connection at times with them, of strangers. You know, they bond closely with close friends. But outside of that, you know, we were raised in a society of stranger danger.
Exactly. 100%.
So how does, so we've talked a little about the space, but there's also this intimacy that happens at space as well. And we talked about safety too. How does, how in a, you know, a dark, strobe lit environment where there's dancing and loud music, how does one also feel connection, and can they hear each other speaking?
Great question. Great question. And I think Imari is the best person to answer this, but I think a lot of it has to do with the structure on how the event unfolds. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, you want to talk about that?
I think it's back to that theme idea. Is we create a safe space, right, through the conversations, through the establishment of the code of conduct, whatever, and then in the safe space, we see what we can co-create in relation to the theme, right? So like Zion was all about like celebration and connection. So once you create the safe space at Zion, how can you explore connection? How can you explore celebration in a way where you feel safe, right? And we've done desire. So desire, we create the safe space and we say, okay, how can you explore your sensuality, Christina, here in a space that is safe, right? We've done royalty. What does it feel? What would it be like to explore your confidence in this? Like, does that communicate?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think, Christina, to your point and to what Imari mentioned initially too, which is, you're not just thrown into there's not just the bouncer at the door that pats you down and says, have fun. It's
have at it.
You walk in there, and from the moment you step in, there's experiences designed to bring people closer together. Yeah. And it can be, just talking about how things unfold, there's usually a period in the lobby, for lack of a better word, where people are encouraged to connect through different activities or little things that might be happening. And then when the doors open to the main dance floor, so to speak, again, we don't just say, party starts, oh my God, loud music, noises, lights, now go connect everybody. Like, no, it's a very gradual increase of energy, so to speak. And we start at a very grounded place. And that involves facilitation. Right. That involves somebody, whether it's Imari or a guest facilitator or something, but it involves somebody guiding people into trust, which I think is really at the core of connection, right? Like, it's trusting somebody else, but more importantly, just trusting yourself to also uphold your boundaries. So we're communicating and showing people ways to express that, so that by the time we get to the full-blown party with the strobe lights and the whole things, it's like you are now armed with the tools to like explore and fully express yourself in connection to everyone else and to yourself. Yeah. So
I'm really glad you said that, because I think for us, we know what happens at space. We know how that stuff happens, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that somebody listening to this podcast is listening to this through the lens of how parties happened in the past. And the way parties happen in the past is, like Miles said, you meet the bouncer gives you a little rundown, and they throw you into a party. Like, every single space starts with a facilitated exercise.
Yep.
It starts with a facilitated workshop that's centered around the theme, right? So it's almost like you have practice before you go to the game. And the game is the free-form dance that Miles DJs, right? But the practice is something that our facilitator or guest facilitator will come in and be like, yo, how can we practice connection right here? How can you discover what your boundaries are? How can you discover what your fear is in this little 45-hour-long workshop? And then, everybody good? Everybody connected? Now, Miles is going to take it away, and now you're released into the wild. Yeah. But you're released into the wild after having undergone an hour of getting tools and training and techniques that you will then use in the wild, which is like, I know how to say no if I don't want to dance with somebody. I know how to feel more connected. I know how to practice moving my body. I know how to get out of my head. These are all things that we practice before the actual party starts.
Yeah, and that facilitation is often like group exercises, duos, and you're switching partners, so you're connecting with different people. Yeah. And also there can be exercise involved with how do you say no to somebody? What does that look like? Try doing that. How does that feel in your body? Like, can you stand in that and honor that? So there's several. The short answer is we designed several experiences before we throw people into the party that are meant to foster connection and a deep level of trust, both in people and in your own body. what you're capable of doing and saying for yourself, standing up for yourself. So
I also think it's important to highlight as well that you can come to space to connect with community, connect with family, meet new people, and you can come to just be with yourself. There's
1,000%.
You could go to a space and meditate in the corner, and you would not be judged, and be an observer of it to feel comfortable. Because as we entered into this podcast, and I mentioned, I'm tender. We all are experiencing different things at different times. I know for Imari, as that you had shared in the last space, that it was a challenging experience for you. And what I have heard, I've only heard a little bit about your challenge that you've had, but space I would put in the category of, sure, yes, it's dance, and it's also transformational. And the 100%. Transformation may not happen just within that 3-hour period of time. You may leave, and it gives you an experience to reflect back on that can help you move through and work through your own individual challenges. So, Mari, I wasn't bringing that up, although, sure, I know you cried on a recent podcast, and I'm always down for that.
Let's make Imari cry.
Yeah, here we go.
But I just wanted to speak to the reflection and the transformation, and that you two and all of the guides of their own experiences, this is entrepreneurship, at its core. Yeah. And 100%. And entrepreneurship is also one of the greatest transformational experiences that one can experience within their lifetime.
Yeah, it's a vulnerable process.
Yeah,
in all aspects of that word. You don't just create something without really exploring the kind of
yourself.
Vulnerabilities within yourself, because it will come to light. It will get brought to fruition. So, I think both Imari and myself have been able to take a pretty hard look at ourselves and what are the experiences that we're not as comfortable in. Where do we shy away, or even in our own relationship, right? I think in this, especially with Zion, should I just give the whole story?
Bro, do whatever you want.
So just to talk about this aspect of being vulnerable and having that be welcomed in space, Zion would not have unfolded the way it did if Imari and I didn't have this coming to Jesus heart-to-heart moment. Because I forgot what it was, but we were planning. I think it was just one of our meetings, and every meeting we start off very intentionally. We sit there, or we'll take a breath together, and we're okay, what do we need to explore? What gets to be discussed now? And I remember we were sitting there, and we're starting to talk, and all this. Or was it? No, it was in the beginning. It was early on. In the
beginning. Bro.
Yeah. We're joking around because if you can't tell, we like to just have a lot of witty banter that doesn't revolve around anything for about 10 minutes before we get to anything substantial. But so we're talking, we're going back and forth on all this stuff, and Imari just goes, "Yeah, blah 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 blah. I love you, man." And I was just like, "Bro, but do you though?"
Dead serious.
Not lying. I was like, "But do you?" Yeah. And I remember he looked up, he was like, "What are you talking about? Of course I do." And what came to light, long story short, is that personally in my relationship with Imari in the past, and when we were living together and stuff, I've always felt a little bit of a tension between us. And I know personally it came from a place of insecurity. But at that moment it translated into, I don't know if I'm feeling loved from, I don't know if I'm feeling this love that you're speaking of, right? And so what ended up unfolding was not a conversation about the logistics of space or whatever the hell we had on the quote-unquote agenda of what we needed to talk about.
2 hours of love.
But it turned into this 2-hour fucking heart melt opening session of bro, like, I feel this way about our relationship, and this is, like, where I'm coming from, and I, felt insecure because this and this and blah, 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 and we were just going in about how we've been relating to each other up to that point. And after that, really, I think we both, there was like before that conversation of our relationship and after that conversation. Like, you wouldn't have said like, oh yeah, Mari and I look like best friends before that conversation.
Correct.
That's like, it was a very much kind of a bonding moment. And that's all goes to say, like, that level of vulnerability is, more than welcomed in the space itself, because that is what created the space to begin with. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, come party and not connect with yourself and other people. It's really like, it's a space for people to cry. It's a space for people to also be able to break down if they need to break down, and know that there's just a container of unconditional love. So it's okay. And yeah, tears were shed, and we've definitely gone there ourselves. So no, it's absolutely welcome.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And, it's new, I would say, for seeing two men. And I know there's women who have a challenging time deepening with their friendships. But you two particularly are two men in your, late 20s who are, you don't get to see, you haven't seen that role model. Where did you learn to deepen the way that you did in that moment? And what gave you the permission? Like, where was that role model to you?
I would like to attribute it to the fact that I'm actually 30.
Oh my God. Okay.
I'm an adult.
Takes Mike back. So we both went through the same self-development program a couple years ago. And in that program, I'm not going to shout them out because they're not going to give me any commission, but in that program, they have an intentional trainings around how to authentically relate to people, how to communicate through conflict, how to navigate, conversations that are potentially uncomfortable, right? So I think that honestly, me and you can go into depths of the depths that me and Miles went into that conversation, but that conversation and that work that we had done prior to that conversation on ourselves shows up in what space looks like now. Right? We could not have created a space of intimacy and vulnerability and connection, whatever, had that not been addressed with us. Right? And I know it's clear to me, it might not be clear to you, we're not here for anything above making sure people connect and making sure people feel free.
Yeah.
That is top priority. Money,
to their truth.
All that, all that is irrelevant when it comes to what makes me and Miles the happiest is when we look out in the crowd and we see somebody just fucking embodying everything about themselves without shame. Whether that's I'm twerking, whether that's I'm laughing, I'm crying, that is why we put in the hours and the work and the logistics to make this space happen. And it's all a very intentional process because we know that that's where the juice is.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, I think one of the core aspects or the kind of through line between the way that Imari and I work together is you can't hide friction. You can't pretend like it's not there and it's going to go away. And in the same way, you can't show up to space and if you're feeling shitty, hide that you're feeling shitty. We don't want that, it's okay to be down.
Yeah.
But the way that works out in our work dynamic is really if you're feeling something, if there's tension, if you're upset about something, say it right then and there, and know and trust two things. One, trust that will be received welcoming, and it's not a key component of being able to do that is not taking it personally, but just understanding this is a separate human being that has its own needs, wants, desires, whatever. And as partners, it's of any kind, romantic, business, anything. Like, it's, you know, being able to hold space for that and not turning it into, this is now all about me and I'm a bad guy and I need to defend myself all of a sudden. It's really like, okay, this is welcomed, bring it into the space. And then the second part is trusting in the bigger forces and emotions and love that is at play. Like, everything that we pour into this is always going to be so much more potent and valuable than whatever small thing that we could be bringing up, even if that small thing feels very intense, right? It's just trusting the fact that, one, we're only saying it to level up and have, you know, space and our own personal relationship have those best interests at heart. And I don't know if I said one. Did I say one? Was I acting like there was a... I'm holding my finger. You can't see this, but I'm holding my finger like I said one. And two, I mean, it's just... It's about... Our intention is to build each other up, always, not tear each other down. So I think that's... even if that looks like, this makes me so uncomfortable because, you know, blah, blah, blah happened, and now I'm like, I feel, you know, icky, or I feel like blocked in my ability to express my creative ideas, for example, or whatever it is. It's just a core aspect of being able to, like, let emotions go, and therefore, as a result, creativity can flow, you know? Bar. Cool. That's how I freestyle, Christina.
Shut up.
And Miles, you shared that that conversation began because Imari had said "I love you," and you kind of checked him in some sense, like
denied it.
Like, wait,
yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Did you guys in your conversation talk about your definition of love? Because what does that even mean when you say, he says, I love you, and you say, I love you, how do you align? Because there's so many different meanings to love. And when I say, you know, a lot of people grow up in households. I grew up in a household where I'm very blessed, and my parents said, I love you freely. And I say, I easily tell my dad, and, you know, him and I are currently together and been vacationing, and I say I love you to him pretty much every night before I go to bed. If I go to bed and he goes to bed before me and doesn't say it, I'm a little bit like, ugh, you know, like what? I miss it. So, I guess for the two of you, this question is like, did you grow up in households where love was a freely used word? And when you say love, what is it that I love you? What is it that you mean?
Oh man, you want to talk trauma on a space promo podcast? All right, here we go.
Well, isn't that part of space? You created space.
No, I'm being so facetious. Yeah. I'll let Miles take it away.
Oh, great, man!
I have quick answers to both of them. So,
well, I think one of the things that immediately pops to mind when you ask that, Christina, is I think the words "I love you" get thrown around a lot, and it's a very casual word or phrase that people say, especially in like the quote unquote conscious community, right? Like, I feel like people are like, "Oh, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you," and
which makes it easy to question.
Right.
If everybody's saying it, it's like, then what do you actually mean?
Yeah, is it losing the power of the phrase, or like what
maybe
it means?
Maybe or maybe not.
Right.
Maybe it's, you know, with everybody,
or maybe there's again different forms of love, right? Like, I can love Imari in a different way that I love you, Christina, and I know we just met, but like, I love you.
And you
know?
I
just love him more. Just kidding.
And just to enter, like, you know, you say the quote unquote conscious community is saying love. Like, I would really enjoy checking out at a grocery store and the cash register leaves and they say, bye, I love you. I love you. Like, I'm down for a world like that.
She's like, everybody.
Love. Like, but just think, let's dive into that thought.
Yeah,
Imagine.
we can unpack it.
Yeah. It gets to what you're saying. How are we defining that? So go ahead.
Yeah, and I think there are different ways there's different ways to love people. But I know for me, as far as my household goes, I was raised by my mother for most of my life until I was about 15. And, you know, her and I always had a very open, like, loving, expressive relationship. So there was a lot of love being shown and discussed in different forms, whether it's, you know, dancing, a meal on the table, whether it's, you know, a kiss goodnight, whatever it is. That was definitely something that was very much present in my life growing up. And the interesting thing that you also brought up is, like, you know, here you have two men discussing, you know, what love means to them in their relationship. And when I won't go all the way down the rabbit hole, but when I moved out here, you know, I moved, it was my father who had reached out. And I never, like, you know, I'd always kept in touch, and I would see him, like, once a year. Me and my mother, I was raised in Amsterdam, so, you know, my father was out in LA, and he reached out, and he's like, hey, do you want to come live here? And, you know, I said yes. We made a little list of pros and cons, but I ended up saying yes. And I moved out here, but the way that, you know, he expressed himself, and the way that he showed love and the way that he was capable of doing so was just so drastically different than how I was raised. Like, I would, you know, tell my mother I love her all the time and stuff like that. But, you know, when I moved out here, especially back then, we didn't have that connection, you know. Love also looked like having a roof over my head, and love looked like, you know, meals on the table, and conversations, or maybe we're driving somewhere or doing an activity or doing something. But it wasn't like a constant, hey, Dad, I love you, man. Like, that just didn't really happen. The beautiful thing is that I'll say now, if he listens to this, he would probably might just murder me. So I'll put that on you, Christina. No, but what happens now is I found, as I'm exploring these concepts with, you know, my dear friends, with, like, Imari and other men in my life, I find that my relationship with my father, which basically framed a lot of how I would relate to men in my life, it brought us closer together. And, like, now we are in that place of saying that, you know, and being, you know, through words expressing how we're feeling more. And I think that's just it's a beautiful consequence of doing this kind of work and being involved in this level of vulnerability, you know?
Thank you.
I don't know, I think that kind of answered your question.
It's great.
All right, Imari, take it away, man.
I'm good. Anything you want to say in response to Miles, Christina, before I jump in? No? Okay.
Jump in.
Okay, thank you. So I would define love when I say it is, for everything that I see about you, I accept. For everything that I... Come on now.
Talk about it.
The boy's preaching.
I'm snapping.
It's almost like he's a professional speaker.
It's true.
Like, everything that I understand and know about you, I accept it, and I don't want it to change. I don't need it to change. I like it the way it is, and you can just go be you, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that there is something to be said for, like...
It's like, I see you. Almost.
I see you, exactly. I see you, and it's great. Keep doing that. With that definition, I would say, yeah, sure, me and Miles actually do love every single person who walks in the door of space, because we're like, yo... Like, go do your thing. Like, I accept you for the way you want to cry. Great. You want to fucking be angry dancing? Do that. I see you.
Can I say something? Something real quick?
Yeah.
And it's funny that he's mentioning that, because that was, like, a big part of what we were talking about. Was, like, I wasn't seeing Imari clearly, and Imari wasn't seeing me clearly, because we were looking at each other with these filters of what we thought the other person was thinking, doing, feeling, whatever.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that a big part of love is being able to just, like, I accept you and see you unconditionally for who you are right then and there. Right. Absolutely.
Minus the stories that I have of you in my head or whatever, blah, blah. It's like, yo, I see you. I get you. We're good. Keep doing that. So yeah, that's how I would define love, Christina. So now you know when I tell you I love you, what exactly I mean.
Well, then who don't you love?
Mm,
that's a very good question.
It's a great question.
I think my immediate answer is no one.
So why not? Why does it bother you with everyone telling everyone I love you?
Like if the grocery store clerk is like, I love you.
Yeah, or if the co-conscious community is saying I love you.
Right. I think my definition of love, I feel good with. I don't believe that
But aren't you accepting
I don't
that?
trust every...
Aren't you accept?
Yeah, I know. I love them as they are. And I don't know how they're using the words, right? Like, for example, like, if we just want to get really real on this podcast, like, I call Miles nigga all the time, right? That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And I can have a white dude come up to me and be like, yo, nigga, and I'll be like, how do you mean that? Like, what is your, like, the way I say it, if you're saying it the way I say it to Miles, honestly, personally, truthfully, I don't care. I'm good. I'm chilling. But if you're saying it with, like, a different intent, then it's different, right? Like, there are people who use love as a weapon. It's like, oh, I love you, so that you have to do this for me, or I expect that from you, right? Like, that it's different.
Yeah, and I think Imari has a really good point, too. It's like, I understand how I define love, and the I don't want to say the weight, but like the honesty and transparency that I put behind that word and like what that means for me. And yes, I do love everybody. And, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I'm like, I don't really have any serious blocks towards me telling people that I love them.
Right.
But it's weird as soon as you frame it like, do I want everybody telling me they love me?
Exactly.
It's like, oh.
Like, hold on.
And then you can be getting into like a worth thing. It can be getting into a lack of trust in people, right? Like I think that's a big part of that.
Yeah.
Like me not necessarily trusting where everybody in the world is coming from.
Right.
But to bring it full circle to space, it's like, it's these kind of environments that are creating a trust in humanity,
right?
You know, so that there are more people that are just operating on that level of like, yes, the grocery store clerk, shit, he was actually just at, you know, Unleashed with me or at Space with me, or I just saw him at the last, you know, Ecstatic that I went to or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just that community of trusting and truly loving people is expanding. So,
you know, what I want to highlight right now is, you know, this episode, this is 15, because I know that when this releases, this will be episode 15 of Deep In with Christina. And episode 14 is Yada Iksa of Unleash, another transformational guided dance journey. And we talked about pedestal. And I think it's important to remember that while you are leaders, and while I am a leader, and while Yadi is a leader, and the people that you meet at all the Deep In experiences, and specifically of who are facilitating these experiences, we're all in our own growth processes as well. So the pedestal, like we're all like, it's time to knock down the pedestal. It's like we saw the rise of the guru and then the fall of the guru. And for everybody to see, you know, as we're having this conversation, that like to not hold anyone to anything they say in this moment, because you're always expanding. You know, you may start this during this and say like, I don't want everyone to say I love you, and then you're like, oh shit, maybe I see it in a completely different way, and yes, let's all say I love you. Like I don't mind that. So yeah, that's just what I want to acknowledge there. And I want to loop back a moment and push back on a little something else. You know,
push, Christina.
A challenge. Imari, you had said that you and Miles had met at a self-development program, but you don't.
We didn't meet there.
No, we both went to it.
Okay, you both.
But we both went to it.
You both went to it, and I believe I know which one it is because I did it too. You said I don't want to tell you because they're not paying me.
I mean, that was such a joke. Like, if you want to say the name, like, go for
it. Because I look at that and I'm like, is he hoarding information? Like, what?
It was such a joke. The program's name is MITT, Mastery in Transformational Training, Los Angeles, California, founded by Margot Majdi. Like, it's like...
Okay, cool. I don't want to hoard anything. And yes, I took MIT too. And, one of the things that I really, why I've invested pretty much majority of my life force energy in the creation of We Deepen, it's the networking of these experiences that are like MITT. Potentially even having MITT on the platform. But what we've seen is that a lot of people who've come out of the work, specifically, Tony Robbins now, I mean, I constantly am having conversations with people who were offspring of Tony Robbins, working with Tony Robbins. I've actually even heard that Tony Robbins is losing his voice and now trying to figure out which direction he goes. So, but because that this work has been available for some time, that now all of these programs are sort of like, they've created this launch pad for these other unique programs to be created that are, now you can go to like a self-development nightclub. What the fuck? Who knew that?
Wow, that's a great way to put that.
Exactly.
Self-development nightclub. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to wrap up here shortly, but we're just coming out of, Astroworld, and that is a tragic, where we have now progressed to. And so I partly want to go and grab all of those people and say, hey, come here. This is an alternative. Yeah. Because we can't keep doing that shit. We can't keep showing up and to these. And there's now so much fear created around that. So of giving people access to what you're doing is so important. And I'm curious, as you two being, I imagine potential people that could have been there that evening and now also leaders of yourself of like, how do you
reach the people?
How do you reach the people? But how do you even comprehend? And does that drive you?
Yeah. The very good question, Christina. You've been killing it with the questions today. Just want to point that out. Something you said sparked a tangent in my mind. And you talk about transformational experiences, transformational events specifically, right? Which I know is like the Deepen tagline, right? Shout out to WeDeepen.com. And it's like, me and Miles, and you are interested in hosting experiences that you go to and then take back and implement into your life, right? Versus you go to a party to like almost distract from your life or to escape from your life. So it's like this little module that you just go to and just like turn off the rest of your human experience. And then you have to go back to it, right? Like my desire for both all the Deepen events that I've hosted for you and for Space is like, go to this to better the rest of your life. Like practice this connection here at Space. And then tomorrow be like, oh my God, I can be intimate with people.
At the grocery store.
At the grocery store. I can tell the cashier I love you. Like, sure. Like let the experience live beyond the doors opening and the doors closing. Yeah. And I think that's the distinction, like, right? Like that's the difference between this and a nightclub. A nightclub is like, I need to drink my pain away. I need to drink my sorrows away. I need to just like get laid so I can feel good about myself. And like no judgment. Been there, done that 3 times. I'm talking about like here, have this experience. We'll give you some, practices. We'll introduce you to some new people, But like let this live on. And that's how it becomes a community, not just an event. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And while I brought up Astroworld to ask your perspective on that scenario or situation, or for you to comment about it, because I also see as, We Deepen is pretty much, representing space and promoting space. And I see you two as faces that, with these, the media segments, the news segments, and as they are, love to, tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy that is being reported. And to see that you two are voices that can speak to these experiences, these events, and offer an alternative or a solution to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, especially with Astroworld, I feel like even events like that, a lot of hip hop shows I know, like a lot of performers and people that I know that are across the board in electronic music, in hip hop, in rock, there's all of those are containers that are set, and I can tell you, like, every performer that comes there is not going, I want everybody to hurt each other and experience whatever brutal way of pain that you need to experience. Like, that's not what they do. It really, I know a lot of those places, especially in like mosh pits, for example. I've been in a few. I'm not a regular mosher. I'm not, throwing elbows like that.
Just
but
on Tuesdays.
Yeah, just on my casual Sunday night. But the ethos, even within those circles, is love, right? Like, it's you help the person up if they're falling down. And that's a really beautiful concept. And it's the same thing with, any Travis Scott show. It's that same concept. Like, I've heard him say multiple times, like, yo, pick each other up. Like, we're here to love, and we're here to get through whatever it is that we need to get through. Now, so that being said, those containers, people are drawn to various steps in the process. That's almost how I look at it, right? So, like, you can get introduced to a concept, and maybe, like, what you're ready to receive at the time is just somebody saying, like, yo, love each other, and boom, like, alcohol, fun, drugs, whatever. Like, maybe that's the and not that, I don't mean level as in, consciousness is up here and, like, our other parties are down here. I just mean that, like, people are ready to receive information at different degrees. So an environment like space, which is like now we're removing alcohol and drugs, and we are at the forefront, and through everything that we do, we really hold this container of safety, right? I don't think that everybody, like, wants that, at this point. And I think that's okay. And I think that, Astroworld, what happened is tragic. And I think that, there's certain degrees, I know, like, festivals like Hard, or festivals like EDC or whatever, those, from my experience and what I've read about, a lot of those places might not really uphold that standard of self-care, and not that it's the performer's fault, or not that it's the artist's fault, but it's such a massive undertaking that, like, inherently there's just a lack of safeguarding. And I think we're fortunate enough at Space, which, again, as you mentioned, it's like 200 people tops, at the venue that we're at. And hopefully we can do multiple of these, around the world. That is just something that we really prioritize, and that is just at the forefront of our minds and in our hearts, that we really do. And this is how we started a lot of our conversation right now, is just the idea of safety and what that means. And we really do want to just uphold that with integrity and with love, and still get to fucking party, like, have a good ass fucking time. Like, I think that pretty much is.
I might
the mission.
Add an asterisk.
Yeah.
Yes, to everything Miles said, and I think that yes, when you get larger crowds, like an Astroworld, like an EDC. It's like just a numbers game. It's like it's hard to maintain a certain, coherence. And at the same time, Burning Man, right?
Talk about it.
Burning Man is 80,000 people.
Yeah.
And the experience is vastly different, right? And I think it's because there's a context. There's like a group agreement, especially like a Burning Man. It's like a spoken agreement. Like, this is how we work. This is how our society, our group, our community operates, and the dynamics that are at play. When you don't set those kind of structures and containers, or you set them very loosely, like, then sure, tragic shit can happen. People can be sexually assaulted. People can be killed. People can just have terrible experiences. But let's not underestimate, like, the role of the facilitator.
Yeah, and the role that personal responsibility plays.
Right.
Because I think that's the beautiful thing. Our friend Aisha, who we're collaborating with as well, shout out Aisha, somebody was saying, she pointed out too that, at a place like Burning Man, the reason why it's considered, such a safe space, or the reason why it's considered such a safe space is because even if the organizers aren't present, thousands of people show up, and each person understands their personal responsibility to uphold the integrity and the values of the space. So I think that's what we are really aiming for as well, is that, yes, it's the role of the facilitator to set the container, but it's on the individual to uphold that standard.
Right.
So you get to, kind of form a community where values are shared rather than values are imparted on. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense, yes. Thank you both for the work that you're doing in the world, for being committed to growth as individuals, as a team. Not only the two of you together, but the two of you with me and with Deepan. It's so fun working with you. You just bring me energy and light and the We Deepan network. And it's so fun to have this partnership with you in this new iteration since the pandemic, and now that we played with virtual events for some time and we're coming back strong with in-person events. And your experience as being a partnership, it's one of the first new partnerships with We Deepan, is feeding all of these other events as you go out and run and support and say, hey, go check out wedeepan.com. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for seeing the network. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. For Space, it's happening monthly. Is that the plan? Is monthly?
Yeah, monthly. We're pretty much, the way to look at it is we're on like a quarter schedule. Or not, is it quarter? There's 12 months in a year. Let's do some basic math, guys. Basic math. But there's, out of every 4 months, we do it 3 out of the 4 months.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, it comes down to 9 times a year.
Yeah.
That's math for you.
Dope.
Thank you, Einstein.
I graduated.
Nearly monthly. Check out Space. Yeah. You can go to Instagram. You guys have an Instagram, space.movement. Yes. Both of you are linked to there on Instagram as well, and they can send you a message, connect with you.
Yep.
Is there anything further you want to share before I wrap this up?
You want to talk about Ashe and V real quick?
Yeah. I also just want to shout out, the people that we really created this with. And
please.
That's Veronica, Mercado, shout out to V, and Ashe, who I believe she's out of the state these days, but we the 4 of us really came together to kind of create this safe kind of nightclub experience for people of all colors, races, whatever, to come together and feel like this is a place where you're accepted. And I think a big part of that too was just tapping into the culture of or I could say the current like kind of pop culture almost. So, by throwing in a lot of music that we grew up listening to and cared deeply about, and putting custom remixes down on the spot, like, we just like to keep things current and for the community, and that's really how it started with V and Ashe as well. So I just want to
shout them out.
I just want to give them a shout out.
Give the roots.
What up, B? What up, Ashe?
Yeah,
roots.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
And
But this has been an absolute fucking blast. Oh, sorry, can I curse? I just cursed.
Bro, you've been cursing for the last
Well,
65
how about just to make sure that we also clarify the music expectation when people walk into this space? Is it hip hop music that they're getting? What?
No. It's informed by a lot of hip hop and R&B, but you're not listening to trap for 90 minutes. It is
10.
It's only for 90% of the time. No, that's a lie. It's really just a very variety of genres of electronic music, and it can be global bass music, house music. But it's kind of threaded, and I'll do a lot of this mixing live where I'm like pulling samples from different hip hop songs and different R&B songs that we kind of interweave through the journey. But it gets pretty bassy, and it gets pretty like high energy, so it's not as should we say woo woo? Like, sure. It's not as like lofty, I think is a better word for it. It is very much like kind of like grounded, hard hitting music that we built to. So the set, like, I know especially for the Freeform set, it starts off with like some more like kind of calming, grounding music, which might have R&B samples in there as well, and then like builds to like the high energy house stuff that we really like to drive the parties home with.
Amazing. Well, I hope everyone goes and checks out Space, gets to experience it. Bring your friends, tell your friends. And bonds build best over time. So if you go to one space, go again and keep bringing your friends.
It's going to be different.
And to all the We Deepin people that gave us feedback, thank you so much. Like, we totally took that, and we're dialing certain aspects in according to what you guys talked about in terms of timeliness, or in terms of, including app language in the event description so that people know what they're stepping into, stuff like that. It really it hit home. So we just appreciate taking the time to fill that stuff out too.
Thank you. It's really important. Yeah, we get to build and create these experiences together. Yeah, and so that feedback is so important. Those reviews are so important.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deep In with Christina. Go to
Deep In with Christina.
Deep In with Christina. Go to the calendar, check out the events. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with your friends. Subscribe, leave a review. You know the drill. Thank you again, and I love you.
Oh, Jesus!
Oh, my heart.
Melt.
Bye, everyone.